Okay, we are live, Savio.
All right. Good morning for the ones in Brazil, and good afternoon, of course, to our special guest and one of his students, Professor Abolaji Mustapha in Lagos, Nigeria. This is the last meeting of our ILF Brazil group in 2021. And I can say that it's a great pleasure to have here with us again Professor Abolaji Mustapha, and it will be great to have him with us so he can share a little bit of his expertise and his research work in Nigeria. So I'm going to introduce Professor Abolaji, and then I'm going to give a few, from 20 to 30 minutes for him to talk about his work in Nigeria, English in Nigeria, and then about the text we explored in the group by reading. And then after this, we'll take questions, any questions from the people inside the room here with us, or and also the ones the audience who's watching us through the through the YouTube channel. So I sometimes, if something happens, Professor Abolaji is going to talk a little bit, and then if we have connection problems, I asked him to turn off his camera while he's talking, and then again, when we are interacting with him, we open up the camera. But anyway, so thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And let me introduce a little bit Professor Dr. Abolaji Samuel Mustapha. So Dr. Mustapha is a senior lecturer at Lagos State University. So Professor, if some of the information is maybe outdated, so you can correct me, all right? Where he lectures and carries out research in the Department of English. So he holds a BA in education in English and a master's degree in English language from the University of Lagos, Nigeria, and a doctoral degree in sociolinguistics from the University of Essex in the UK. Dr. Mustapha is interested in gender and language, gender in education, teaching of English as a second language, politeness and speech functions, language planning and policy, multilingualism, Pidgin Creoles, and among others. So as we can see, a very rich research interest in terms of different topics that our colleague, has. He was a visiting scholar at the University of Birmingham, the School of Education in 2013, where he worked with Professor Christine Skelton, a leading figure in gender in education research in the UK. So Professor Mustapha is a member of the International Gender and Language Association, ELTT Nigeria, Gender and Education Association, and also the Nigeria English Studies Association. So he has attended academic conferences, workshops, and seminars within Nigeria, within and outside Nigeria. He has published extensively, both in local and international journals. And in terms of academic awards, Professor Mustapha has won the Commonwealth Scholarship Award, Essex, UK, and also the Daad Scholar in Germany, British Academy Visiting Scholar Award, and he was at Sheffield Hallam University, UK, and he is a Commonwealth Fellow at the University of Birmingham. Or he was a Commonwealth Fellow at the University of Birmingham, as I said. So, as I said here, Professor Mustapha has published extensively, and we chose one specific text to talk about in this meeting, and it was published in 2014 in ICALA, Revista de Lenguaje y Cultura, and the title of the text is Linguistic Hegemony of the English Language in Nigeria. So, Professor Mustapha, thank you very much again for being with us. It's an honor to have you here with us. So feel free to talk about your work, your research, in Nigeria, and a little bit about this text, because the text, as I was telling you before we started, is very interesting and brings a lot of interesting information about the linguistic landscape in Nigeria. And I would love to hear you and also interact with you and get, of course, comments and questions from the audience. Thank you very much, Professor Mustapha. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Savio. I'm very glad to be part of this academic meeting, and many thanks to our colleagues who have joined us.
Professor Mustapha, the floor is yours. Did we lose Professor
in Brasil-UFBA? I hope we'll have, from the moment, I am in the professorial cadre in my university in Nigeria. Anyway, thank you very much, Savio.
Thank you, sir.
As Savio had rightly noted, I've been into the teaching of English language and then into multilingualism, particularly with some studies in gender and language. Without taking so much of your time, I'd like to talk briefly about the article that was published in ICALA that many of you might have read. Then you have some questions or some contributions that may help for us to understand how communities, hegemony of English language in Nigeria. The thrust of a paper is to give them a kind of guidelines for dominated languages that are trying to survive under dominant languages. And in this case, we're talking about
Did we lose?
the dominance of how the minority, and I'll talk about the hegemony of the English language, briefly on its positive and negative effects on heritage languages of the world. Then two, I'll talk about how to control
Daniel, maybe we could tell Professor Mustapha to turn off the camera, no?
The negative effect. The paper itself, that's the
Say what, Daniel?
Maybe we all should.
Yeah, yeah.
you turned off your mic. So,
Are you there?
Okay. Can you tell him, Daniel, for him, I'm going to turn off mine too.
Professor Abolaji, are you listening to us? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
We're going to turn off our cameras to improve the connection. Is that okay? Because we're having some difficulty.
Right. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
You can go on.
Okay. As I said, I'll discuss very briefly about the two major parts of the article, that is the hegemony of the English language. And under that, I'll look at the positive and the negative effects on heritage languages. Then the second part, I'll look at how to control or resist the negative effects of the dominance of the English language. So let me take the first point, which has to do with the hegemony of the English language, with leading relations between dominant and minority groups. And essentially, hegemony is established through consent and persuasion. So when we come to linguistic hegemony, we're talking about a situation where some people or their agents convince those who fail to meet their standard to view their own failure as being the result of the inadequacy of their own language. That's according to Willie 2000. Linguistic hegemony. You have a particular group of people dominating others and then bringing them to a situation whereby they look at their own local or heritage languages as inferior languages. In fact, Suarez 2000 comments that linguistic hegemony could get to a very worse state where linguistic minorities will believe in and participate in the subjugation of their own minority languages to the dominant, to the point where just the dominant language remains. So you can see that kind of a very worse situation where the dominant language takes over and then speakers of dominated languages believe in the dominance and the dominance of the dominant language, and then they begin to view their own languages as inferior languages. So that's the point that demands a measure of resistance or control. And there is no doubt at the moment worldwide that the English language has assumed that position. As we speak now, English is a dominant language, not just a dominant language amongst where the British Empire once colonized, but it's a global dominant language. In terms of politics, technology, scholarship, international relations, English takes the lead. Well, it has its positive effects because in terms of mobility, social mobility, economic mobility, educational mobility, advancement, and linkage. Well, English takes the lead, and those are parts of the positive effects we have as a result of the dominance of English. But aside from the positive effects, we also have negative effects on other languages. For example, works, as we have in the article, show that the dominance of English language, or the hegemony of the English language over other languages, has been playing a kind of a divisive role in the world, whereby speakers of the English language and those who are not users of English language, particularly the latter group, feels inferior to users of the English language. Aside from that, the dominance of English is considered as an agent of threat to development and vitality of other languages in the world, especially heritage languages. Aside from that, the English language is also playing a kind of marginalization of local languages. In fact, some speakers of indigenous languages have been caught up in a web that they see their own language as being stigmatized, and some are even unwilling to learn their own local languages. We have experienced such in Nigeria. Fortunately, some mechanisms have been mounted to resist or control such dominance. So you can see the effects, the positive and the negative effects of linguistic hegemony, and in this case, the English language. Now, to address the negative effects, the article suggests some measures or mechanisms that should be put in place. And those measures are applicable not only to what we have or what we're experiencing in Nigeria, but to other languages of the world that are being threatened by dominant languages. Now, by resistance, we're talking about how to control the negative effects of the dominant language, and in this case, the English language. That is, how will speakers of heritage languages retain their languages in the face of the incentives and opportunities that the English language offers, so that they will not shift entirely to the dominant language? If you look at, I will assume you've read the paper. There is a particular mechanism that has been suggested in the article, and that is the paradoxical linguistic hegemony mechanism. In other words, it's suggesting a context-sensitive and pragmatic resistance that should be in place in order to resist the negative effects of the dominant language. So in Nigeria, for example, we know that we inherited the English language from the British government when Nigeria was colonized. And after independence, Nigeria retained the use of English language as its official language. And later on, as an attempt also to curb the negative effect of the English language, Nigeria also introduced 3 other local languages to compete with the English language in the official assignment. That is, aside from the English language being the official language, we also have 3 major local languages also serving as official languages of the country. It was recently that the French language was also introduced as one of the official languages in Nigeria. So in all, we have 5 official languages, but the English language plays the major role as the official language. So what are those mechanisms that the paper identifies as paradoxical linguistic hegemony mechanism? 1, the mechanism suggests that there should be a creation of an awareness of a negative effect of the dominant language. An awareness that local languages or languages of the people are being threatened. And if nothing is done, the only language that will remain will be the dominant language. So under this mechanism, an awareness must be created. 2, there must be a program that will maintain heritage languages. And such programs must be functional, pragmatic. For example, in Nigeria at the moment, some states in the country have introduced the promotion of their own local languages. There is in Lagos State, for example, the language of the immediate environment, which is the Yoruba language, is competing, as it were, with the English language. So that in schools, for example, aside from the use of English language, the Yoruba language is also introduced. In fact, we have a state in Nigeria where to be employed as a civil servant in that state, aside from being literate in the English language, you must also be literate in the local language of the people. So that's part of the functional or pragmatic mechanism that should be mounted to maintain the heritage language of the people. Number 3, there must be the promotion of bilingualism. Bilingualism in the sense that 1, we must, number 1, buy into the dominant language because of its positive effects and its offers. I mean, we cannot doubt that. We cannot push the English language aside. But at the same time, the local language of the people also must be maintained so that individuals in the country are encouraged to be bilinguals. That is, they have competence in the English language and also competence in their local languages. And number 4, that's part of the measures that the article suggests, is that the local languages must be popularized and institutionalized. In other words, speakers of those languages should use them where necessary. And then there should be an official recognition of those local languages. For example, in Lagos State, at the State Assembly, on a particular day of the week, the language of business, that is of debating, is entirely one of the local languages, that is the Yoruba language. And in some parts of Nigeria, at the state assemblies, it's the local language that is used in addition to the use of the English language. So many of these measures that the article suggests are already in place. For example, in our own educational system, the first 3 years of a child, the child is taught using one of the local languages as the language of instruction before English will take over the third year. And then the local language is retained. And at the final exam of the elementary education, the child will write an exam on the local language. The same thing at the secondary school level. Learners are compelled to learn one of the local languages, and they will have to write a paper in their final exam. So this is part of the institutionalizing of the local languages. The media houses also, we have media houses that are dedicated to the use of the local languages, newspapers, radio houses, and some television houses as well. So these measures are in place, but in addition to the ones that we have in place, this article also suggests that even at the higher institution level, we have what we call general studies. The learning of the local language will also be included so that our students at the higher institution level will be taught one of these local languages and will write a paper in their examination and pass it before they can be awarded a certificate. So these are some of the measures that the paper suggests that should be introduced to combat the dominance of the English language in Nigeria. And that, I mean, those measures can also be applied to other countries where other dominant languages are threatening the existence of the local people. And it must be added that these measures are anchored essentially on international laws guiding human rights, guiding linguistic equality, as well as respect for national sovereignty. So in essence, the article acknowledges the place of the English language as a dominant language, not just within Nigeria. It's a global dominant language. It has good offers, but the negative offers or effects should be resisted. And under that, we said we use what has been referred to as paradoxical hegemony mechanism. So that's it on the paper. I'm happy to entertain some of your questions and then contributions as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right, Abolaji?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I think you pretty much summarized in a brilliant way, you know, the text, and we'll open up for questions and comments. So I don't know if people on the YouTube channel have read the text, but I will, before I pass on the word to Fedepo, and of course, there are lots of things here to explore, and I really appreciate when you you know, within the text you talk about this you know, the landscape and also the status of English in Nigeria, and when you close, let's say you talk about hegemony and everything, But then when I like this part, that's the one that I found really interesting when you start talking about the mechanisms that will in many ways not necessarily demonize English, but it will reinforce the importance of bilingualism or plurilingualism, even though you don't mention plurilingualism or multilingualism. Oh yeah, you do. Involving local languages. So I would have several questions, but then I will ask one question, and then we can discuss. And of course, we hear the people who might ask questions too. So when you mention, for example, these mechanisms, I know that you are also interested in political planning and political and also linguistic policies. How in terms of official policies, how would you, for example, which picture could you tell us in terms of political, official, linguistic policies that might go into that direction of, as you say, not only protect, but also promote and stimulate the use and also the, I'm going to put in quotes because this might happen, the survival of local languages in Nigeria. Is this something that comes from scholars like you, from, let's say, specialists? How far has this gone, for example, to the administration or the, I don't know if you have a Ministry of Education, how far has this whole discussion reached the stakeholders, the people that really are responsible for, let's say, linguistic and educational policies? Did you get my point?
Yeah, I do.
Can you tell us something about it, please?
Yeah, I mean, what we do here in Nigeria, for example, and I guess in other parts of the world, is that whenever we're having conferences, we do invite government officials to be part of such conferences. And very often at the end of every conference, we come up with a communique that will relate to those in the authorities some of the suggestions and recommendations of scholars meeting. And many times our own government here are quite, they have that listening ears. Aside from the communique they get from our conferences, very often official institutions here often invite experts, scholars in their different areas to address issues that are germane to the people, so that it's a collaborative and informed decisions that are often made, decisions that are based on research findings, decisions that are based on what some people will refer to as community meeting, where you have the meeting of the local people with scholars who have carried out research. So many of the decisions or language policies that we have are informed not only by what the people want, but also from research, empirical research that have been submitted or that have been entertained by those who come up with such policies. For example, our own language policy in Nigeria, as we have in the National Policy on Education, experts in our higher institutions, researchers were invited, and there was a kind of a brainstorming before the language policy came up. I mean, what we have in the language policy now is that every child must be taught in the first 3 years at the primary school level using the language of the immediate environment, which will be one of the local languages. So the English language will now be used as the language of introduction after the 3rd year of a child. And then at the secondary school level, the child also, as we have it in the policy, will have to be taught one of those local languages. And when they are writing their certificate exams, the child will write a paper on that local language so that every child is taught and trained, as it were, to become bilinguals. That is, the child is competent in English and also in one of the local languages. So what we do is there is a kind of collaborative work between official institutions and then the research work that we produce. And that way it had helped in promoting many of these corrective or resistant mechanism. For example, Lagos State has a language policy at the moment. And I also mentioned a particular state in Nigeria where before you can be employed as a civil servant, you must, number one, be literate in English, and then number two, must be literate and competent in the use of one of the local languages. So this is how there is a kind of collaborative work between government officials and those of us who are within the university walls. Yeah, I don't know whether that takes care of your question.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's good to know that this is because of course we scholars or investigators, we don't, in a way, we don't have the last word, right? So in terms of educational policies, but of course we can inform the ones behind, especially in the Ministry of Education or other institutions, in order to take official steps in terms of laws and what should be done in the classrooms in terms of language learning, teaching, etc. Thank you. I think Pedepo had raised her hand before. Hello, Pedepo, would you like to say something? Welcome.
Yes. Yes. Good afternoon and good morning.
Thank you.
Whichever applies to you. Thank you, Professor Abolaji Mustapha, for that wonderful session. He's my teacher and my boss. Okay, that's something I observed personally, and I think a few scholars have also observed it, that very educated bilinguals in many countries, especially in Commonwealth countries like Nigeria and in other places, seem to be the ones who shy away from the heritage languages, especially in urban centers. I want to know, is it because they do not see the positives or the positive offers that these heritage languages have, or is it a kind of status symbol? Is it that they really don't want to associate with the language? Is it do they see it as a kind of minus? Because I personally have observed that very educated people, well, many of them are not linguists, so they kind of shy away from these heritage languages. When they're in the urban centers, some of them don't even want to speak. You greet them in the local language, they respond in English, you get to their offices and all of that. I'm wondering, even at very informal settings, what exactly is the issue? Because some time ago, I actually did a research on one of the languages here in Lagos State, my own indigenous language, the Ogu language. I did a research on language shifts, and I observed that the language is seriously threatened. That's been some time ago. I do not know the level of the threat now. Maybe it's fully endangered or dying, I don't know. But from my own research, I observed that very educated bilinguals or multilinguals are actually the ones who shy away from indigenous languages. What do you think is the issue and what can be done? Thank you very much.
Great comments and great questions.
Yeah. Okay, if I may respond to that. Generally, where you have a dominant language with all its offers, and because people want advancement, economic advancement, technological advancement, social advancement, so because of the offers of the dominant language, very often you will find people preferring the dominant language to the heritage language. But what can be done? It's part of what already we have in place at the moment. For example, the Ogu language that you refer to, you know that the Ogu language is one of the languages in Lagos State of Nigeria.
Yes, sir.
And Yoruba appears to be the dominant language. Dominant because it has a larger population. Speakers of Yoruba economically, they are leading. So you'll find that the speakers of the Ogu language will rather go for the Yoruba language that is dominant because it has larger population, it has economic values and rest of them. But locally, you also know that one of our governors introduced the Ogu language as one of the languages to be used in one of the radio stations in Lagos State.
Yes.
And I think the Lagos State-owned radio station still uses that language as a way of promoting the use of that heritage language. So the state is working towards encouraging the use of heritage languages. And of course, you know that in other parts of Nigeria, many states, their television houses, their radio houses are also using the heritage language of those states. So, but at the local level, at the family level, it's very, very imperative for parents to encourage their child to use the local language, to be competent. I started a particular work in that paper where you have this Spanish community in the US. The Spanish community, according to that research, Suarez 2002, we have two groups. A group felt that, well, if we want our children to advance, then they must be competent in the use of English at the expense of the Spanish language. But the other group felt that, well, for the advancement of our children, English is important. This other group now also felt that their own local language, the Spanish language, is also important. So right from the home setting, they encourage their children to be competent in their own heritage language, and as well as the English language that is the dominant language. So what we need at the moment, because the states in Nigeria have taken measures to promote local languages. So at the home level, parents, guardians are encouraged to emphasize the use, the learning of a heritage language. That way, the endangered local languages will be averted. And that is what the paper advocates, that we know the value that the English language offers, but also because of identity, national identity, sovereignty, and the offers of our heritage languages, language users should be encouraged to be bilingual, speakers and users of English, the dominant language, and also their heritage languages. I hope that helps. I hope so.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yes. Thank you very much. I think you just hit the nail. It has to go back to the family, and we'll sort it out from there. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think Danielle has a question.
Professor Abolaji, hi. Thank you
Hi.
for the text. Thank you for the presentation. It's wonderful for us in Brazil to learn about your experiences in Nigeria. And we learn and we see and we read lots of things about European countries, right? But countries, African countries or Asian countries, sometimes, this coloniality, Western knowledge, we ended up forgetting about them, right? Those pieces of information, they don't come to Brazil, right? So thank you for this opportunity to learn more about Nigeria. And I have one quick question first about something that you wrote in your text. You said that on page 89 that efforts to revitalize African local languages, as some scholars have recorded little or no success. I'd like to understand why these efforts, have shown little success. What have been done to try to revitalize those local languages?
Well, okay. From what we have in the literature, the little success we've had is also as a result of the dominance of the English language. That's one major factor. Two, because of the economic, technological, and advertisement, this is deliberate, that the English language also offers. So aside from its offers, native users of English are also systematically advertising their own values and promoting their own values in such a way that you have second language users of English looking down, as it were, on their own local languages. And this is quite sad, but recently there is a kind of awakening. We've got scholars who have been given scholarship, research funding to look into how to revitalize our local languages. And good enough, Nigeria some years back established a National Institute of Local Languages. It was first based in Aba, and through that institution, we have commitment, official commitment from the government set to promote and revitalize local languages. And of course, SOAS, that's in London, yearly, sponsors research for the promotion of local languages, especially endangered languages in Africa. I've forgotten the name of the German scholar who is in charge of the funding for African countries. So in response to your question, well, the offers of the English language are luring our people. And of course, the advertisement, I'm sure you are aware, English, native users of English, they have one great agent all over the world. and that is the British Council. One of the major activities of the British Council all over the world is to promote the use of English, to promote English culture, and to so do it in such a way that users of heritage languages will look down, as it were, on their local languages. But efforts are on to resist, especially the negative effects of the dominant language. I don't know, Danielle, whether that has helped in some way. Has it?
Yes, thank you. Sav, you can ask just a follow-up question?
Yes,
A very quick one. Professor Abolaji, I really would love to learn about Nigerian Pidgin. How much of English is there in Nigerian Pidgin? How do you feel about Nigerian Pidgin?
Yeah, Nigerian Pidgin is, as we speak now from research, it has larger speaker population than speakers of the English language. Nigerian Pidgin is a full-fledged language. It is not a bastardized English. It has its own phonology, lexis, syntax. So as we speak now, Nigerian Pidgin is a full-fledged language. It's not a variety of the English language, no. But we also know that when you talk about Pidgin, normally you will have the superstrate and the substrate. The superstrate is the dominant language for Pidgin. So looking at Nigerian Pidgin, the English language is a superstrate donor of the lexis. In other words, if I should speak, give you an utterance in English, like for example, Nigerian Pidgin, waiting on they do. Waiting on they do. Okay. If you count the number of words you have there, you realize that English has more words. So that's why English is a superstrate. And then the substrate, those are the local languages, including Portuguese. Okay. So Nigerian Pidgin has its own syntax. It has its own lexis, spelling, phonology, and many thanks to Professor Francis Igbohare from the University of Ibadan. We also have other people, Elugbe, they've written a book, but Elugbe and his, the other author has a book titled Nigerian Pidgin, where you have all the levels of linguistic analysis spelled out. So, Daniel, Nigerian Pidgin is a full-fledged language, speakers, and it has varieties. The standard variety of Nigerian Pidgin as we speak now is a Wafi variety of the Nigerian Pidgin. And Nigerian Pidgin, if you go online, has a new name, and that name is Naija, Naija. Naija, a colleague in France we are collaborating and working on promoting the use of Nigerian Pidgin. There is a center at the University of Ibadan also that is dedicated to the promotion of Nigerian Pidgin. And there are many studies that have been carried out proposing that Nigerian Pidgin should be the national language of Nigeria. So as we speak, it is a full-fledged language. It has its native speakers. There are varieties of Nigerian Pidgin. And I have a paper on it if you go online. And Nigerian Pidgin being the linguistic ranking points for Nigerians. It's seriously competing with the English language. And as I said earlier, we have more speakers of the Nigerian Pidgin than speakers of Nigerian English. I don't know whether that's
this is
okay.
This is really interesting, Abolaji, but I would like to complement what Danielle asked. So it means you said the new name is Niger, like Niger, right? Of Nigerian Pidgin.
Yeah, N-A-I-N-A-I-J-A.
Naiga.
Naija.
Yeah,
Naiga.
yeah.
Naiga.
Niger.
Okay.
Niger, yeah.
So then Naiga, let's as you said, the word Pidgin is very loaded. So
Yeah, very.
Let's begin to call by the name. So Naiga will compete, and already probably from what I understood, competes with Nigerian English, and we could say how is the presence of British English? I mean, I know that English is nativized in Nigeria, and but how is the presence of what we would call British English? And then I have another question that I'm going to ask later when you answer. We have a couple of questions from the audience. On page 92, you say that we have, I mean, there is a, let's say, I don't know if I would call a fight or a competition between what you call the radical pro-English activists and the pro-local language activists, right? So probably you remember this. This is on page 92.
Yeah. I do.
If we could call this a war, let's put this way, who's winning this war at this point?
Sorry, I mean that.
Did you get my point? For example, we have two competing forces. We have what you call the radical pro-English activists.
Yeah.
And you have on the other, so the other side of the tug of war. Yeah. You have a language activists. Who's winning this war at this moment? What do you think?
Well, definitely the pro-local languages are winning. The radical pro-English, they are the people we refer to in linguistics as purists.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, they are. I mean, many of them, they still do not believe that there is what we call Nigerian English.
Right.
So any departure from the British English to them, they are a bundle of errors. Okay? So, I mean, that we have one of the areas we have in linguistics is prescriptive linguistics.
Of course, yeah.
Where you all prescribing. But those of us in social linguistics, we describe, we're into descriptive linguistics.
Yes.
Well, the prescriptive school is not new, even from Ferdinand de Saussure, where there is much emphasis on the learn and the parole. So, but definitely the pro-local languages group is winning.
Good to know that.
Yeah.
So, and how about the status of, for example, of when you put together Nigerian English and the so-called British English? So, can you give us a picture of is for example how strong, if this is the point, is the presence of what we would know by British English in Nigeria at this currently?
Yeah, I mean, Nigerian English is a variety of English. Okay, and it's to many people it's still a second language variety. Okay. But in terms of comparing Nigerian English with Nigerian Pidgin, officially, Nigerian English occupies a very significant official role. Very many people still associate Nigerian Pidgin with the language of the lower group. Okay, so for example, in many instances, in our own language policy, Nigerian Pidgin is not one of the official languages. It's not one of them, and it's part of what those of us who are into social linguistics were still promoting or proposing, that Nigerian Pidgin should be made one of the official languages. But aside from that, many media houses, they use Nigerian Pidgin for newscasting. Many of our politicians, when they campaign, very often, because they know that is the language of the people, they use Nigerian Pidgin to campaign during election. And in fact, the government, when the government wants their information to reach the grassroots, many of the jingles they have, many of the jingles, the materials they print, they use Nigerian Pidgin. And that reaches larger population than the use of Nigerian English. So in terms, if we were to do a kind of a ranking, British English, it's waning. Nigerian English is coming to the forefront officially. But in terms of the language of the masses, the language of the larger population, Nigerian Pidgin occupies that position.
Okay.
But you know that within social linguistics, there's what we refer to as language attitude, which they have the prestige, and then the other one is non-prestigious. But even within the prestigious languages and the low prestige language, we have what we call the overt prestige languages and covert, where people will rate a particular language low, but in terms of use, they use that language more than the other languages. That's the covert prestige that the Nigerian Pidgin enjoys.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have here a question from. I'll try to explain because it's a he brings the citation of two authors. I don't know if you know them, Abolaji. So the question comes from Fabio, he's a colleague of ours at the Federal University of Tocantins, which is a neighbor state here, and a dear friend. He says, Professor Sousa Santos, I don't know if probably you know him from Portugal, Boaventura de Sousa Santos is a scholar that discusses globalization and several other issues. He's not into linguistics, but in social philosophy. So he says, Professor Sousa Santos once said, there is no global social justice without a global cognitive justice. A kind of vision that, according to Walter Mignolo, which is another scholar from Argentina, and he's one of the names, probably you have heard of the modernity coloniality project here in Latin America. And then he says, there cannot be a revolutionary praxis without theory. So, Professor Mustapha, departing from this claim, what would be the place of decoloniality in a world order that is at the limit of a catastrophe? It's a very deep question.
Yeah. Could you please repeat the latter part of the question?
Okay. It says, departing from this claim, what would be the place of decoloniality? Maybe he's trying to associate decoloniality with, within the linguistic, in a world order that is at the limit of a catastrophe.
Well, decolonization
Mm-hmm.
It's for the countries that had, it's very, very difficult for those countries to do away with the heritage of colonialism.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult what they will with. I mean, the literature that we have are largely written in the languages of the colonized.
I think we lost Professor Mustapha, didn't we? Danielle?
So the area where you
I'm sorry.
can you hear
sorry,
me?
Sorry, Abolaji. We lost you for a couple of seconds. You were talking about the
Oh,
conversation, and then it froze.
yeah,
If
yeah,
you could repeat, please.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can take it up from there.
Okay.
So talking about countries who had been colonized, I did say that to do away with the heritage of colonialism will take a longer time.
Mm-hmm.
But even for countries who were not colonized by the British government, I mean, for example, take some countries in Europe that were never colonized by the British people, English language, because they recognize the place at the moment that the English language occupies globally. So my response would be that, number one, for colonized countries, they will have to live with part of the heritage of colonialism. And then, because of the offers of the English language at the moment, it's difficult for them to do without the English language. But when we now look at countries that were not colonized by the English language, I mean, for example, in Germany, as we speak now, we have institutions that are using the English language as the language of instruction. So the English language, even in Germany, is being promoted. In Finland, it's been promoted. So if you take a global look at what is going on at the moment, it's really, really difficult to resist vehemently the influence of the English language globally. But at the same time, as linguists, we know that language is dynamic, and any language could be dethroned at any time. I mean, Latin was once the global language. And but English speakers, native speakers of English, they've got their agents, and their agents are working very, very hard, very, very hard to ensure that English maintains that dominance. So in relating the question to the English language globally, I'm afraid it may take some time, but at the same time, as linguists, we know that language is dynamic. I mean, Chinese language is competing at the moment. So when we talk about linguistic dominance, it's related to economic power, political power, technological power of countries. So if we have countries that will be able to take the lead economically, technologically, then English will be pushed to the background. But as we have today, it's a task that might be difficult to accomplish within very few time. I'm not sure whether that accommodates or takes care of our professor's question.
Thank you. Daniel, we have some more questions. Thank you, Abolaji.
Yes,
You're welcome.
We have two questions in YouTube.
Okay.
One from our friend, Professor Kelly Barros, and I'm going to read her question. She asks, what attitudes do you take up to be or to keep yourselves local and still be or keep yourselves global? It's an interesting question. So I'm going to repeat it. What attitudes do you take up to be or keep yourselves local and still be or keep yourselves local? How to? It's a very interesting question. I understand why she asked the question. We are trying to find answers to that question here in Brazil, right? And how to keep our identities and still navigate in this globalized world where English, is the language.
Yeah. I mean, a section of the paper addresses that. In social linguistics, it's proven that monolinguals are at great disadvantage, but bilinguals, they have an edge. So it's wisdom to buy into a language that, so to say, is dominant and has good offers. So to be economically relevant, politically relevant, technologically relevant, if a language has assumed that dominance and has those offers, it's good to key into it. But at the same time, your own heritage language has great value, are we together, for your identity. Heritage language is very, very important when it comes to identity. So the advocate now is that we should be competent in the dominant language and also retain our heritage language because of our national identity. Because we cannot wholesale throw ourselves into a dominant language that places us nowhere on the globe. We are people with a definite identity, and we must not lose that identity. So if I may respond, because you have your roots, so maintain your heritage language, be competent in it, and then it's a way of, it's a kind of a division of labor. The services that the global language will serve, but you also know the services that your heritage language will serve, and you maintain both. And when you need the dominant language, use it, and there will always be cases where you will need your heritage language. Be proud of it. I met a Jewish scholar in the UK. I was surprised. We were conversing in English, and he insisted that his child must speak the Jewish language. And he insisted. So it's very, very important. We mustn't lose our national identity because of a global dominating language. So, that's my response to her question.
Yeah, thank you. So it means, and as we know, monolingualism is more of an exception than a rule, right, Abolaji?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the more languages you control, the more arrows you've got.
Yeah. This is something that I'd like to address also, that I found very interesting in the text, is that this is an argument that I think it's extremely important, and I'd like you to make some comments on that. It's just like, by learning the dominant language, it doesn't mean that you should leave behind your identity and your culture. And it doesn't mean that you have to, let's say, assimilate values from, let's say, from the, the places or the culture the dominant language comes from. Let's put this way.
Yeah.
But I like when you mentioned, for example, by learning the language, and if you could make some comments taking the Nigerian, context as a reference. So it's this idea of learning the language to talk back, right? So as people say, well, you learn the language. I don't want to use the word enemy, but we see this a lot, right? Learning the language of the enemy to talk back, to talk at the same level. Well, and you mentioned this in a different way, but you do mention this here because, of course, by learning the language, the dominant language, it is much more than simply adjusting to the, let's say, to the promises that come with that, language.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it's just like a way to talk back, a way to be present in this arena of disputes. Don't you think so?
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your question now?
My question, I'd like you to make a comment on this, because that's what you mean, because sometimes people, they just look at this more, as you mentioned here, this more pragmatic, vision of learning the language for a more pragmatic, a more utilitarian, objective. But it's much more than that. And then if you could make a comment on this.
Yeah. I mean, the point, we have studies that have shown that if one is to learn a second language, the learner who has reached what we refer to as the threshold. In other words, the learner who has mastered his own heritage language will do better in learning a second language.
Sure.
Than a second language learner that has not mastered his or her heritage language before learning a second language. I mean, I have a study that compared how bilinguals and monolinguals, how they perform in learning a second language. And the study shows that bilinguals who have reached the threshold in learning and the use of their own heritage language, they do better in the second language learning than those who come from homes where the first language has not been acquired up to that threshold level. So what we're saying in essence is that there is much advantage even in learning a second language for those who have gained enough competence in their heritage language. So, the other studies have also shown that that is the fact that monolinguals, they don't do well when they learn the second language, and that having more languages, as it were, okay, if you command more languages, you are more accommodating. You can interact interculturally with people than people who are just monolinguals and all they have is just the culture of one language. So we're thinking of people who are bilinguals or multilinguals being enriched more than those who are monolingual, and that learners of second language or foreign language who have acquired their heritage language, they do better in learning a second or foreign language than those who don't have that threshold ability in their heritage language. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I found when you mentioned this here, thank you. When you say here, in fact, successful resistance may lie in the usefulness of the dominant language. And that's when you talk about the paradox, remember? But that's
Yeah.
So it goes beyond, you know, this just acquiring the language for pragmatic reasons only. It's much more than that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Danielle, I think we have one more question. Daniel?
Yes. But before making the question, just would like to acknowledge that Kelly Barros, about your answer, Professor Abolaji, on how to be local and global at the same time. Kelly said that your answer was great. And yes, we must, being proud of our heritage language is the beginning. And she says, thank you for your answer. And another question we have from Daniela. She says that, Daniela Duarte, she asks, when it comes to Nigerian English, what can you say about the role of the linguistics studies in order to give more visibility to this variety? Would you like me to repeat it?
Okay, that's Nigerian English, right?
Yeah, when it comes to Nigerian English, what can you say about the role of the linguistic studies in order to give more visibility to this variety? This is a question from YouTube made by Daniela Duarte.
Yeah. I mean, Nigerian questions we have from scholars is one of the world Englishes. It's acceptable. It's a variety on its own. It has its own. It has its own lexical description, phonological, and syntactic, as well as pragmatic features. So in terms of what studies, I mean, we have so much studies in that area, so much. If you have a look at the Journal of English Worldwide, you'll have so many articles that have been published. Awonusi, Udo Fort, then you have Tomori and the other people. So
I think we lost him again.
It depends on where you look. Many international outfits, Nigerian English, and so much have been done on Nigerian English. I've just mentioned the English Worldwide. We have some journals in Europe where you have many of these works being published.
Did we lose connection?
Every time you ask that, he comes back.
Yeah, he was talking about that there is a worldwide publications worldwide talking about Nigerian English. Let's see if we can have him back.
Oh, I think we lost him.
Yeah, but I believe he will reconnect. And also, for example, while we wait for him, we have World Englishes that was a journal that's published in the United States. So there are many articles about English.
Is it
Abolaji?
Abolaji?
Are we back?
He is here, but I don't think his connection is stable.
Oh, there it comes.
Yeah, I can. Oh.
Yeah, we lost you. You're back.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
You're talking
That's
about,
like I mentioned.
Yeah, you were talking about the journals where that have published
Yeah,
extensive.
journals. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, very extensive. And we have scholars also from other parts of the world who have studied Nigerian English. The late Braj Kachru
Yeah.
at the University of Indiana in the United States. Yeah, yes. The Outer Circle English. That's
Right.
from Braj Kachru.
Yeah.
Quirk, Randolph Quirk, Greenbaum. They've done some works. And of course, we have a Briton here in Nigeria, David Jowett, based at the University of Georgia.
Yes, Abolaji.
He's done a lot of loads of them on Nigerian English.
And also, as I was saying, Abolaji, we have World English is the journal that was founded by Braj Kachru that you mentioned. That has also brought lots of interesting articles. That's how I met, for example, I don't know if this is the right pronunciation, Bamboos or Bambos. So he has published
Banjo.
How do you pronounce his
and
name?
then is it Banjo? Banjo.
Banjo.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember coming across very interesting articles by him about Nigerian English and English in Nigeria. In world Englishes.
You have Awonusi. Yeah. Yeah. And many others. The other guy in Ghana has also done some works. That's Datse, Anthony Datse. He's done lots of work. The other guy from Cameroon, Samba, has done so much work on Nigerian English as well. Udu Fons from University of Uyo, so much work on Nigerian English. And
yeah, we are, the connection is not good at this very end. But anyway, I think I don't know Danielle, but I think he answered Daniela's question, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think he did.
So in terms of the promotion, I mean the how Linguistic sees. One more question by Daniela. Let's wait.
No, that was the question.
That was
that was the question.
Sorry, Daniela. We thank you for your question, but unfortunately, we lost the connection with Professor Abolaji. Let's see if he comes back. So, he might be trying to reconnect.
He's trying. I see.
Because we are. Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes. You can.
Yeah.
I mentioned David Jowett. He's done a lot of works. He's a Briton. He's been with us for a very long time at the University of Jos in Nigeria. If you Google his name, he has published so much on Nigerian English.
What's his last name again?
David Jowett, Jowitt.
Okay, Jowett. Okay, great. All right. Daniel, any other questions?
No, I don't see any other question here on YouTube.
Well, it's 11:40 here, and then we've been connected for almost 2 hours. So
good.
Time flies, doesn't it, Abolaji?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does.
I think you know, it was great, even though we you know, we could stay here for a longer time listening to you, because you really show to us how much you know about the topic. And you know, what I like about your writing is that you have a picture of the whole context, and you offer solutions. For example, I really liked the when you, at the very end of the text, you bring, for example, in the light of this discussion, you make recommendations to promote Nigeria's local languages. And I believe these you know, recommendations, they go beyond the Nigerian context, because we have the same situations in many places, including here, because we don't have a very, let's say, I could say, not even healthy situation in terms of the hegemony of Portuguese and the local languages. I mean, the indigenous languages.
Yeah.
In this case, it's not English, Portuguese, and we face the similar challenges. And I really enjoyed you know, your recommendations in terms of you know, promoting these languages, especially at the family level, when it comes to keeping. Because, for example, you say that Nigeria now has around 400 languages, and I believe many of them are threat, right? In Brazil, when the Portuguese arrived here, we had around 1,250 languages, and we are down to 185 maximum. So there was a glotticide, a huge glotticide here. So then, even so, I don't think we have learned the lesson in many of these languages, especially in areas, you know, in the Amazon and in some border areas. So they are threatened. So I really enjoyed reading your recommendations here. Anyway, we are about to finish. If you know, if you want to give us your last words for today, that would be great. But anyway, I already really would like to reinforce our honor of having you here, and I hope we can meet sometime in person somewhere.
God willing. Yeah, somewhere.
And collaborate in any way. You know that you know, I'm sure this talk will be available on our YouTube channel. And be sure that you are already someone that Brazilians interested in English studies know, right?
Thank you very much.
And for example, if you'd like, maybe we could collaborate in any way, your students with our students, our you know, graduate students. That would be a pleasure. All right. But anyway, I leave the floor to give us our final words for today.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Savio, for having me. It's been a very insightful session. But essentially, what the article advocates is that, number one, we cannot run away from linguistic hegemony. We'll always have one particular language dominating the other. But the fact remains that dominated languages can be retained, can be maintained, and that those who keep their heritage languages with the dominant language are far ahead of the lead to the dominant language, and first suggested dominated languages can still survive. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Before
can still survive. Dominant language referred to as context sensitive, measures.
Yes, it doesn't have
Sorry?
to, it has to.
That's it.
Thank you. I was going to say that even though we know there are the dominant and the dominated, we can in many ways resist and try to, to take advantage of the situation, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, before you go, can you open your camera so then we can take a picture, Abolaji? In the other ones, we have another, I think it's another student of yours, Abdur, and we have here.
Okay.
So in the room, if please, if you can open the camera so then we can take a picture of the five of us here in the room.
And Geronima as well.
Geronima is also here. Okay, yes. All right.
Turn on your cameras.
Sure.
Geronima.
The picture guy.
Geronima, are you there? Okay, I'm gonna count to 3 and then we take the picture, okay?
Okay, great.
1. Abdur is here. Nice to see you.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3. Another one, just in case. 1, 2, 3. Okay, great.
Okay, so.
Oh, Geronimo showed up. Let's take another one. Geronimo is here.
All right. Okay.
Abdur, come on. Just a second. I'm gonna count to 3 again. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Great. So then, Professor Mustapha, thank you very much once again for this
thank you.
Great morning for
thank
us.
You, Daniel.
Great
it's afternoon here now.
Yeah.
Daniel, thanks a lot for the great work.
Oh, thank you, Professor. Thank you. It was an honor to be here with you, to read your article and to talk to you. It was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah. And thank you.
Oh, thanks very much, Daniel.
Thank you, Pedepo, for being here. Abdur, Geronima, thank you, Daniel, and thank all the, our dear friends and colleagues who came to see us online.
Thank you, teacher.
This is the last, as I said, it's the last.
Thank you.
The last meeting.
Thank you.
Of our research group, English as a Lingua Franca in Brazil, and we'll be back again next year. But as I said to Professor Mustapha, our connections remain, and let's see if we can collaborate in any way in terms of student collaboration, faculty collaboration. It would be a great pleasure. So thank you. Have a great Christmas, everybody. Great New Year.
And you too.
Thank you. And I'll see you next year.
God willing. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Jeron.